The weight of the world often feels heaviest in the quiet moments before sleep or in the frantic hours of the early morning. You know the sensation well. It is that persistent, gnawing anxiety that stems from a feeling of being misunderstood, overlooked, or worse, perpetually forced to defend your position against people who do not truly matter. You spend your days projecting your intentions, explaining your plans, and seeking validation from peers, colleagues, or even anonymous faces online, hoping that if you just articulate your vision clearly enough, the world will finally grant you the respect or the stability you crave. Yet the more you speak, the more you seem to lose ground. The more you explain, the more opportunities you provide for others to dismantle your arguments, criticize your character, or distract you from the path you have painstakingly laid out for yourself. You feel like a person shouting into a gale, exhausted, drained, and fundamentally stuck in a cycle of reactive living. It is a paradox that defines the modern age. We are told that success requires constant visibility, incessant communication, and the art of the persuasive pitch. We are taught that if we are not heard, we do not exist. But consider the alternative, a path so counterintuitive that it feels like silence in a world of deafening noise. There is a method for mastering your environment that does not require you to say a single word. It is a philosophy that has been tested for over 2,000 years, utilized by the architects of empires, the masters of commerce, and the most disciplined minds in human history. They understood that the greatest power does not lie in the volume of your voice, but in the impenetrability of your composure. This is not a fleeting life hack designed for a quick dopamine hit. It is the practice of strategic silence, a fundamental pillar of Stoic philosophy, that transforms you from a victim of your surroundings into the undisputed sovereign of your own mind. You have likely spent your life believing that you must broadcast your intentions to manifest them, that you must debate your critics to silence them, and that you must constantly justify your existence to claim your place in the room. History suggests exactly the opposite. The individuals who truly command a room, who enter a space and shift the energy without lifting a finger, are almost never the loudest ones. They are the ones who possess the stillness of a mountain, a groundedness that unnerves the frantic and draws in the wise. By the end of this exploration, you will understand why speaking less is not a sign of weakness or social anxiety, but the ultimate expression of tactical mastery. We are going to dismantle the ego-driven need for external validation and replace it with a fortress of internal discipline. This is about reclaiming your agency, conserving your energy, and operating from a position of such profound clarity that the world begins to conform to your presence, rather than the other way around. To understand why your current approach is failing you, we must first confront the core of the problem, the illusion of control. We live in an era where we are obsessed with managing the perceptions of others. We curate our images, we defend our reputations, and we try to manipulate how the world interprets our actions. The Stoics, specifically thinkers like Epictetus, identified this as the primary source of human misery. There is a fundamental dichotomy of control that governs our existence. On one side, there are the things that are entirely up to us, our own judgments, our own actions, our own intentions, and the internal standards by which we measure our worth. On the other side, there is everything else, the opinions of others, the success or failure of our external endeavors, the weather, the economy, and the reactions of the people around us. When you spend your energy trying to control what is outside of your influence, which is what you do every time you explain yourself to a skeptic, or worry about how your work will be perceived, you are essentially delegating your peace of mind to external forces. You are giving everyone you meet a leash, and you are letting them pull you in whichever direction their mood dictates. If they praise you, you feel inflated. If they criticize you, you feel deflated. You are a puppet on strings held by people who do not even share your vision. To stop talking is to cut those strings. It is a declaration that your internal life is private, and that your external results will speak with a volume that no argument can ever match. Consider the nature of influence. People are naturally drawn to what they cannot fully grasp. When you lay all your cards on the table, when you reveal your plans, your insecurities, and your justifications at the first sign of pressure, you become a solved puzzle. You lose your mystery, and by extension, you lose your authority. Think of the most respected figures you have ever encountered in your own life. They are often defined by a certain restraint. They listen more than they talk. They observe more than they react. And when they finally speak, their words are measured, impactful, and devoid of the need for approval. This is not accidental. It is the result of a deliberate, calculated silence. By holding back, you conserve the weight of your words. You ensure that when you do decide to speak, you are not merely filling the silence, but changing the landscape of the conversation. The Stoic practice of amor fati, or the love of fate, is the catalyst for this transformation. When you stop trying to argue with reality, you stop trying to argue with people. When someone attacks your project or belittles your path, your natural instinct is to launch a counterattack. You want to prove them wrong, to show them the data, to outline your strategy, to demonstrate your brilliance. But in doing so, you have already lost. You have allowed them to set the terms of engagement. You have shifted from being the master of your own process to being a defendant in the court of public opinion. If you instead remain silent, if you simply nod, observe their projection for what it is, and return to your work, you create a vacuum of power. The other person is left with their own words, their own agitation, and their own unmet need for a reaction from you. They are forced to confront their own emptiness because you refuse to fill it for them. This requires a radical shift in your internal value system. You must arrive at a point where your own character is the only judge you respect. This is the immunity to criticism that Marcus Aurelius wrote about so extensively in his personal journals. He constantly reminded himself that the praise of the mob is as meaningless as their condemnation, for both are based on the shifting, unstable sands of popular opinion. If you are doing what is right, if you are acting in accordance with reason and virtue, then the external reaction is irrelevant. If you are doing what is wrong, the praise of the world will not save you from the internal corruption that you have allowed to fester. Therefore, in either scenario, the opinion of the outside world is a distraction. By choosing silence, you are choosing to prioritize your own judgment over the noise of the collective. You are building a sanctuary where your sense of self cannot be touched by the turbulence of the environment. We must also address the strategic scarcity of your presence. In a world of overexposure, where every thought is tweeted and every moment is documented, the person who disappears is the one who commands the most attention. There is a profound psychological weight to the idea of the quiet operator. When you are constantly talking, you are constantly spending social capital. You are bleeding energy. When you are silent, you are accumulating capital. You are becoming a person of potential, a reservoir of hidden capacity. People begin to wonder what you are planning, what you are building, and what you are thinking. They project their own hopes, fears, and respect onto the blank slate of your silence. This is not about being cold or inaccessible. It is about being intentional. It is about understanding that your energy is your most precious resource, and you should not be spending it on people who have not earned the right to hear your thoughts. This is not a transformation that happens overnight. It requires the constant, painful exercise of holding your tongue when you are itching to defend yourself. It requires the discipline to stand in a room where you are being misrepresented and to remain calm, knowing that the truth of your actions will inevitably reveal itself. It is a form of endurance training for the mind. Think of it as a physical discipline, much like a weightlifter building resistance. Every time you refrain from justifying yourself, you are building a muscle of internal stability. You are strengthening your core against the winds of external opinion. Over time, this becomes your default state. You stop feeling the urge to explain because you stop needing the validation. You start to find a quiet, deep, and unshakable joy in knowing who you are, regardless of what the room thinks. When you master the art of the silent room, you are not just changing your social dynamics, you are fundamentally altering your relationship with time and action. Most people live in a state of reaction. They wait for someone to speak so they can respond. They wait for a crisis to occur so they can panic. They wait for an opportunity to arise so they can scramble. By detaching yourself from the need to respond to every stimulus, you reclaim the time you previously wasted in defensive posturing. You gain the space to think, to plan, and to execute with a level of focus that is inaccessible to those who are perpetually distracted by the opinions of others. You move from the periphery to the center of your own life. Consider the Stoic leader. They do not lead by shouting instructions or by constantly proving their competence through debate. They lead by setting the tone. When the room is in chaos, their silence acts as an anchor. When the stakes are high, their lack of panic signals to everyone else that the situation is under control. This is the ultimate form of influence. It is the ability to dictate the temperature of a situation without ever raising your voice. It is a quiet command. If you want to master any room, you must first master the room within your own head. You must clear out the clutter of ego, the need for validation, and the desire to be understood. You must become the observer of your own life, rather than the actor playing to the gallery. When you stop performing for others, you finally begin to live for yourself. And in that living, in that quiet, focused, and purposeful existence, you will find that the world begins to listen far more closely than it ever did when you were shouting. The journey toward mastery requires that you confront the most difficult aspect of human interaction, the desire to correct those who are wrong. You encounter this every day. You hear a colleague make an inaccurate claim, you watch a friend walk into a self-destructive habit, or you see a social situation veer toward an outcome you know to be disastrous. Your immediate, almost biological, impulse is to intervene. You want to insert the truth, to correct the record, and to guide the outcome. You believe that by speaking up, you are performing a service, a duty of clarity. But you must ask yourself, how often does this intervention actually change the mind of the other person? And how often does it merely sour the environment, create defensiveness, and deplete your own reserves of patience? The Stoic approach to this problem is radical. You must accept that you are not responsible for the ignorance of others. You are only responsible for your own adherence to the truth. When you abandon the need to correct everyone around you, you gain something far more valuable than being right. You gain the ability to navigate through the foolishness of the world without being affected by it. You learn to observe the chaotic reactions of others as one might observe a storm. Something that is happening, certainly, but something that does not require you to stand in the rain. When you stop trying to convince people of your perspective, you suddenly find that you have an immense amount of energy left over. Energy that was previously burned on fruitless debates and exhausting explanation. This brings us to the core of radical self-discipline, the art of the secret. We live in an era that worships the transparent life, where we are encouraged to share our processes, our struggles, and our milestones as they happen. But consider the psychological cost of this constant broadcast. When you announce your goals to the world, you receive a premature sense of accomplishment. The dopamine hit that comes from the validation of others feels like the real thing, but it is a hollow substitute for the actual work. It cheapens your ambition. By keeping your intentions, your strategies, and your progress to yourself, you foster a sense of internal gravity. Your goals become your own private obsession. You stop needing the permission or the applause of the crowd to keep moving forward. You become self-contained, a closed system that feeds on its own progress rather than on external feedback. Silence is the ultimate shield against the corrosive power of criticism. When you have not told people what you are doing, they cannot attack your plans. When you have not revealed your vulnerabilities, they cannot weaponize them against you. You become a moving target that is impossible to lock onto. If people do not know what you are chasing, they cannot judge your speed or your methods. You maintain the absolute autonomy to pivot, to change your mind, and to refine your approach without having to answer to anyone. This is the freedom that the great philosophers guarded so fiercely. They understood that the moment you invite others into your private process, you lose a piece of your sovereignty. To reclaim that, you must cultivate the discipline of keeping your mouth shut. even when your ego is screaming for recognition. Think of the transformation that occurs when you decide that you no longer care about being liked or understood. This is perhaps the most frightening step for most, because we are wired for social belonging. We fear that if we do not participate in the constant exchange of opinions and justifications, we will be cast out or ignored. But the truth is the opposite. When you stop acting as a participant in the social theater, you become a person of interest. People naturally gravitate toward those who do not seem to need them. By withdrawing your need for approval, you become the most powerful person in the room. You become the mirror that others must look into, and they will always find themselves reflected in your calm, detached, and silent presence. They will start to wonder why you are so at peace, why you are so focused, and why you are so unbothered by the noise that drives everyone else to distraction. This state of immunity is not something that is granted to you. It is something you build brick by brick, moment by moment. It starts with the small, daily choices. The next time you are challenged, do not offer an immediate rebuttal. Instead, pause. Give yourself 5-second silence before you decide if a silence is even necessary. In most cases, you will find that it is not. The silence will make the other person feel the weight of their own agitation. You will walk away from the interaction with your dignity intact and your internal peace undisturbed. This is how you win. You win by refusing to play the game that everyone else is obsessed with. You win by realizing that the most powerful thing you can do is to hold your ground without saying a word. As you integrate this into your life, you will notice a shift in how the world treats you. Because you are no longer broadcasting your intentions, your actions will carry a sense of gravity that they lacked before. When you finally do speak, people will lean in because they know that you are not speaking just to fill the air. They will know that your words are the result of deep observation and careful calculation. You will have built a reputation not as a talker, but as a person of substance, someone whose presence is felt more than it is heard. This is the hallmark of true authority. It is the ability to influence the direction of a situation, the morale of a group, and the outcome of a project simply by existing within it with unwavering discipline and calm. Remember, the Stoic path is not about repression. It is about selection. You are not suppressing your thoughts. You are curating them. You are deciding which thoughts are worthy of being voiced and which are better off kept in the quiet sanctuary of your own mind. You are protecting your focus, your energy, and your integrity from the constant erosion of external influence. You are constructing a life that is built on the bedrock of your own standards, rather than the shifting sands of public opinion. This is the way to master any room, any situation, and ultimately, any moment of your life. When you leave this video, do not feel the need to broadcast what you have learned. Do not rush to tell your friends about this new philosophy, or explain why you are suddenly being quieter in meetings. Let your actions do the talking. Let the change in your demeanor, the increase in your focus, and the calm in your response to pressure be the only evidence you offer. The world will notice, even if they cannot put a name to it. They will feel the shift in your presence. They will see that you have moved into a new tier of personal power, one where your words are reserved for what truly matters, and your silence is a deliberate, tactical choice. You have spent enough time trying to manage the world from the outside. It is time to start managing it from the inside. When you reach the point where you no longer need the world to validate your existence, you become truly free. You become the quiet, steady, and unmovable force that defines the atmosphere of any space you enter. You are no longer at the mercy of the opinions of others. You are the architect of your own character. Keep your plans secret. Keep your goals quiet. Keep your composure unshakable. In the deafening roar of the modern world, your silence will be the most profound statement you ever make. This is the path of the master. Walk it with intention, walk it with pride, and walk it with the silent, ironclad confidence of one who knows exactly who they are and exactly where they are going. The noise will eventually fade, but the person who remains standing, calm and untouched in the center of the storm, will always be the one who commands the room.